Hi, I'm going to show you how to knit these socks. I'm going to show you step by step so that you can follow all the way, even if you have never knitted socks before. As I am Norwegian and I don't get to exercise my English very often, you'll have to excuse me if I say something strange or if I don't find the right words all the time, but I will try my best. So, I will start with a wool yarn. This yarn is supposed to give 22 stitches, between 20 and 22 stitches on 4 inches or 10 centimeters if you use knitting needle size. In the Norwegian size it's 3.5 millimeters. I have gone down half a size to 3 millimeters. I believe US size that equals 2.5. You're going to have to check that in some, it's easy, just Google it, conversion chart for knitting needles. I'm going to use size 3 millimeters on a yarn that is intended for 3.5 millimeters. So, when I cast on, I'm going to do it this way. I just make a loop first. I don't need a very long end. I will need 14 stitches on 4 needles. So that is going to be, oh really, math, 56 stitches in all, evenly distributed on 4 knitting needles. So, I will just, this is my first stitch, I'll just hold here with my left hand, use my forefinger and go underneath the yarn, knitting needle on top of this thread, down and up this loop. Don't pull too tight because it will be impossible to knit your first round. Just, I really don't know how to explain, so I'll just do it slowly for a couple times and you can try and do the same. I believe actually that this is called the single cast on. The reason why I do this and not the long tail cast on or another technique is because I think by doing it this way it will be more elastic. I'll do it a bit faster now. How many? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13, 14. And then next needle I put it underneath and hold the 2 needles together and I just keep going. Finger underneath, and you can see I make this loop here, that I go under the loop, up, let go and pull slightly. Make sure that the next stitch on this, the first stitch on the new knitting needle here, that it's close to the last stitch so that you don't get a big gap here. So I'm just going to do this and be done with it so I can explain more. I know some people will not use this method to cast on because it's difficult to knit the first row, and you can pull on the stitches when you knit the first row and make it uneven. And yeah, the first round is not really comfortable to knit, but you will see as you knit your second and third row that it will not be a problem. It will be even though it doesn't look like it on your first row. So if you have patience to do your first row slowly, then I think you will get a much prettier result doing this, because you will have a really narrow edge. You won't have a front and a back side of your knitting. It will just be this narrow ridge, and it will be more elastic than if you do, for example, a long tail cast on. 14. And then the last one. Five, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And you can see here this, when this happens, you can just lift the whole thing up and hold it for a while and it will spin. And then problem solved. Okay, so I just have to organize all these needles. The first one, the first needle here with the yarn end, I will hold in my left hand, and the last one with the rest of the yarn that I'm going to use when I knit, I will hold on my right side. Okay, so, and the yarn I will hold over, this is how I like to do it, over these two fingers, and I just secure it down here, but any way you like. And now I'm going to do, I think it's called the cuff of the sock, the part that goes around your ankle. Yeah, I believe so. And I will do 2 stitches that I just knit. I stick my needle in here, I pick up, I go over the yarn and around to pick it up and pull it through like this, and pull it off the needle like this. And I knit the second stitch the same way, and I am going to purl the next 2 stitches. Then I go on the far side of the yarn with my knitting needle, and then I stick the needle through the next stitch from behind, go back around the yarn, stick it through like this. I will do this one more time on the far side here, and it can be a bit tight first row, so, but don't worry, it will be better. So now I have knitted 2 stitches, I have purled 2 stitches, I'm going to knit, knit, and purl and purl like this. If some of this is unclear, there are plenty of good videos on YouTube where you can see how knit stitches and purl stitches are supposed to be done. But I hope that you can see enough here that to be able to do the same on your own if you don't already know how to. So I have knitted the first needle. Doesn't really look good right now, but just wait, it will. You can see I have a gap here. Don't worry. Last 2 stitches were knitted, so I'm going to start 2 purl stitches here on the next needle. When I do the first stitch here, let's see. You just make sure it ends up close to the last one. And after your second and third row, it really will not be visible that you have had these gaps. And now 2 knit stitches. It's really slow, this first row, but it's just 1 row. So I will now keep doing this, 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, until I have knitted the whole ankle part of the sock. And then I will come back to you to explain what the next step is. Okay, so I have now finished knitting the cuff or ankle part of the sock, and I've changed my yarn into it's still a wool yarn, but this is a reinforced yarn specially made to be used on socks so that they will be more durable. So I've just knitted 4 rows, and as I said earlier, I have gone down half a needle size. The reason why I'm doing it is because I want the sock to be firm and not lose shape so easily. So, and here you can now see that it's really elastic. So the way the technique I used to cast on has created this narrow edge here, and it's really stretchy. So next step. This is the beginning of my row. I can see that by looking at my first yarn end here where I started. And I am now starting to knit the heel. So then I'm going to use only my first needle and my 4th needle. So I am knitting the whole way, no purling this time. Like this, and then I turn my sock around And then I will purl my way back. But when I do this, as you can see, I now have the yarn towards me, and I need it on this side here over my finger. I will not take the yarn under here, because then, let's see, there you can see the yarn will cross over here. This will make small knots on the side of the heel, and it will not be even. So to avoid it, I will take it over my knitting needle here on the left side of the first stitch. I take my first stitch loose off like this, and then I purl, and I go like this the whole way. I'm sorry that you get all the knitting needles and everything all over the picture here, but I really don't know another way of doing it. I hope you can get the information you need. So now I am back where I started, and then I need to do the other side. So I purl one needle this way, so this is the inside of the sock. So when you knit so that you see the inside, you always purl. Now I turn my sock around again. I take the first stitch loose off. Now you can see the yarn is already on the far side from me, so I don't need to do anything. I just take the first stitch loose off, and then I just knit. Like that. So now I am back at the beginning of my row. So first I knitted there, I purled my way back to here, and then I knitted back to the center again. And I have now knitted the two first row of the heel. I will do this 10 more times so that I knit in all 20 rows. And when I have done that, I will be back to explain what to do next. Okay, now I have knitted this part of the heel, 20 rows this is, and I have finished at the center or at the beginning of my row. And now I'm going to shape the heel, and then to do that I will start by knitting 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then the next 2 stitches I will knit together. Like this. And then I will knit 1 more stitch, and I will turn around. I will take this stitch loose off, and I will purl my way back to where I started. There. And then to the other side I will purl 4 stitches, 3, 4. The next 2 stitches I will purl together, and then I purl 1 more stitch, and I will turn the whole thing back around again. And now I am on my knitted side, so I take the first stitch loose off, and then I knit my way back to the beginning of the row. And now you can see I have 6 stitches on each side here, and then there's a gap. And on each row I knit, I will I will sorta. I will knit until I get to the last stitch before the gap, and then I will knit the gap together, the last stitch before the gap and the first stitch after. I knit together like this, and then I knit 1 more, and then I turn around. I take the first stitch loose off, I purl my way back, knit this gap together, purl this gap together, purl one more, turn around, and this goes on and on, back and forth, until I end up knitting together the 2 stitches here on each side. And when that is done, I will be back with the next step. Now I am done with the last step, or not the last step, but the last step I showed you. So as you can see, you get the shape of the heel here, and I have knitted 2 and 2 stitches together all the way to each end. And I am now back at the beginning of the row, and I have 9 stitches on each knitting needle. So the next step, I will start by knitting these first 9 stitches. I'm just going to do that first. And I will connect these 2 by picking up 10 stitches along the side of the heel. And the way I'm going to do that is by first seeing here along the edge, where you can see, as I explained earlier, I don't have any knots. I have this nice and even, almost like V pattern, and I should be able to stick my knitting needle in here and anywhere along the side. And I will just start up here, make sure I have the edge there. So that's 1. 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. 7. 8. 9. 10. Like this. And I continue to knit these 2 needles that we haven't touched for a while, and now I keep knitting, I purl 2 stitches and I knit 2 stitches and I purl 2 stitches. Just keep going like I did before. like this. And I will do the same on the other side. Knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, and now I'm going to pick up 10 stitches on this side and then knit the last part back to the beginning of my row. So now I am back at the beginning of my row and I have picked up 10 stitches from each side. So the next thing I'm going to do is that I will knit the first needle, and now I will do only knit stitching the whole way. Make sure it does not get too loose. It's better to knit a little tight now, because if you don't, you will get gaps and holes here, and you don't want that. So now, sorry, I'm a bit fast. When you get to the last 2 stitches here. Okay, so you knit the first needle, the first 9 stitches plus those you picked up, except for the last 2. You knit those together like this. And you keep going. I will just knit this so I get to the other side. Knit 2, purl 2, and so on. Try and keep in the center of the picture here. It's not it's not really easy when you focus and you're an amateur like me. This is not that used to work with a camera. I just hope I get the information to you in a satisfactory way. If you have any questions about what I am doing and why, just leave a comment and I will answer you to the best of my ability. Okay, so now 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14 stitches belong on this one. And then, to make things tidy and easy for me to remember, I will just move these stitches that I picked up over to the next needle, so it will be the same on each side. Otherwise it will be easy to forget things and make mistakes like I almost did before. So on the other side, the 2 last stitches were knitted together. On this side, to make it the same on each side, I have to knit together the first 2 stitches like that, and I tighten it a bit before I go on. And I will continue to knit together the last 2 stitches of the first needle and the first 2 stitches on my 4th knitting needle until I have 14 stitches on each knitting needle. So I will knit together the last 2 here and the first 2 here on each row until I have 14, 14, 14, 14 stitches. And then when I when I have 14 stitches on each needle, I will just continue around and around and around and around. I will knit here, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl, and I will knit here again. And then you just knit to the length that you want, and then I will be back to explain to you and to show you how to make the toe. Now I have knitted the foot of my sock as long as I wanted, and I will now show you how to make the toe. And on the toe, first row, you knit 4 stitches like this. Next 2 stitches you knit together like this. You knit 4 more stitches. Next 2 stitches together, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, next 2 together. And on this part you do no longer want to knit and purl, you only knit. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, and 2 together. And this goes on for the whole row. And when you have completed the whole row with knitting 4 stitches, knitting 2 together, then you just knit 4 rows without any stitching together. And after knitting the 4 rows, you do 1 row where you knit 3 stitches, knit 2 together, knit 3 stitches, knit 2 together for the whole row. And then you knit 3 rows. Next row you knit 2 stitches, 2 together, 2 stitches, 2 together. You knit 2 rows. Next row you knit 1 stitch, 2 together, 1 stitch, 2 together. After that you just knit 1 row. And then last row you only knit 2 and 2 stitches together. I will do that and I will come back to how I finish the sock. Now I have knitted everything together. Last row I did was just knit together, and I'm left with 8 stitches. So I have cut my yarn and I will just knit the last row and just pull my yarn through each stitch like this. So this is it. Now the sock is finished and all I have to do is to pull to close this hole. I prefer to turn my sock inside out first and do it on the wrong side, on the ins, so that I think it's easier to get the toe better shape. like this. We'll pull. Sorry about that, but anyway, here's the result. I turned my sock inside out, pulled the thread on the inside. As you can see, I got a nice rounded toe. This here will make the foot elastic, and it will fit all types of feet. There you go. Thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful.